There's a phase of building wealth that feels like running through sand. You're working, you're saving, you're doing everything right. But the progress feels painfully slow. You check your balance and it's $8,000. A month later, it's $8,600. Another month, $9,200 and you're thinking at this rate, I'll be doing this forever. The gap between where you are and where you want to be looks impossibly wide. And the worst part is nothing in your daily life has really changed yet. You're still making the same trade offs, still saying no to the same things, still waiting. And then something happens around $20,000 that nobody prepares you for. The sand turns into pavement. And suddenly you're not just moving, you're accelerating, not just financially, although the math gets noticeably better, but in your career, in your options, in the way problems affect you and opportunities present themselves. Everything that was changing slowly at $10,000 starts changing faster at $20,000, not incrementally faster, noticeably faster. And understanding why gives you a massive advantage because you can lean into the acceleration instead of accidentally stalling it. My name is Max, and I want to help you learn how to make your money work more for you in your life. This channel is about understanding the specific stages of wealth building, not just save more, but what actually changes at each milestone and why. If that's what you're looking for, subscribe because we go deep on this every single week. Okay, so here's what most people believe about the journey from $10,000 to $50,000. They think it's all the same effort, same experience, same grind, just bigger numbers. It's a linear slog where nothing changes except the balance. And because they believe that, they focus entirely on the destination and completely miss the transition that happens in the middle. $20,000 is the transition point. And the reason it's important isn't because $20,000 is a magic number. It's because $20,000 is approximately where three separate forces, financial, psychological, and social, start compounding on each other simultaneously. Before $20,000, those forces were building independently. At $20,000, they converge. And when they converge, the speed of change accelerates in a way that feels almost unfair. Let me explain what I mean with an analogy. Think about a plane on a runway. When it first starts moving, it's slow, heavy, burning a massive amount of fuel just to inch forward. That's $0 to $10,000, all effort, minimal movement. Then it picks up speed. The engines are working hard, but you can feel the acceleration. The scenery is starting to blur. That's $10,000 to $20,000. And then there's a specific moment. Pilots call it rotation, where the plane tilts upward and lifts off the runway. The wheels leave the ground. And once that happens, the physics change completely. You're no longer fighting friction. You're no longer grinding against concrete. You're in a different medium, you'll cite, one that's designed for speed. $20,000 is rotation. It's the moment you lift off and the resistance drops dramatically. Not because you're working less, because the environment you're operating in has changed. But here's where it gets really interesting. Let me unpack those three converging forces because understanding them is the key to riding the acceleration instead of accidentally braking. Force one is mathematical. At $20,000, your money is generating meaningful returns for the first time. If you're invested at 8% average annual returns, $20,000 generates about $1,600 a year in returns, roughly $133 a month. That's not life-changing, but it's no longer trivial. It's like having an invisible roommate who contributes $133 a month to your savings without asking for anything in return. And that roommate gets more generous every year as the balance grows. At $10,000, your returns were about $66 a month, barely noticeable. At $20,000, they've doubled. At $30,000, they'll be $200. The contribution from compounding is scaling up fast enough now that you can actually feel it. Force two is psychological. Researchers in behavioral economics have identified a phenomenon called the commitment cascade. The idea that once you've invested significant effort and resources into a goal, your psychological commitment to that goal increases dramatically. At $5,000, you were building a habit. At $10,000, you were proving a concept. At $20,000, you've invested enough time, effort, and money that your brain refuses to let it fail. The commitment becomes self-reinforcing. You protect the balance more fiercely. You resist temptation more naturally. And you make decisions with a longer time horizon because the stakes feel real. There's also a concept called psychological momentum, studied by researchers like Albert Bandura, which shows that sustained progress toward a goal creates a motivational force that accelerates future progress. The more milestones you've hit, the faster you move toward the next one. Not because the math is easier, but because your brain has built a pattern of success that it now expects to continue. At $20,000, you've passed $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, and $15,000. That's 4 milestones of evidence telling your brain, this works, keep going, and your brain listens. Force 3 is social. And this one surprises people. At $20,000, your financial behavior starts becoming visible to the people around you. Not because you're bragging, but because the effects of financial security are hard to hide. You're calmer. You're more decisive. You handle setbacks differently. You don't complain about money the way you used to. You don't panic when unexpected expenses come up. And people start treating you differently in response. This isn't mystical. It's social signaling. Psychologists have shown that humans are incredibly attuned to nonverbal cues of stability and competence. When you're financially stressed, you broadcast it in your body language, your tone of voice, your risk aversion, your reactivity. When you're financially secure, you broadcast that too in your composure, your willingness to take initiative, your steady decision making, and people respond to those signals instinctively. Colleagues trust you more. Friends come to you for advice. Your manager sees someone who's composed under pressure and starts giving you higher stakes assignments. Your landlord is more willing to negotiate with you because you're a reliable, stable tenant. Even dating gets subtly easier. Not because of the money, but because confidence is genuinely attractive, and financial security creates genuine confidence. These social shifts create a feedback loop. People open doors for people they perceive as stable and competent. And those open doors create opportunities that accelerate your financial growth even further. When these 3 forces, mathematical compounding, psychological momentum, and social perception, start working simultaneously, you stop running through sand and start sprinting on pavement. That's why $20,000 is the liftoff point. I know you may be thinking, I'm not at $20,000 yet and this feels far away. So let me show you the timeline, because it's probably closer than you think. Let's say you're investing $500 a month at 8% average annual returns, starting from $5,000. You hit $10,000 in about 10 months. You cross $15,000 around month 18, and you reach $20,000 at roughly month 26. That's just over 2 years from a $5,000 starting point. Now, watch what happens after $20,000. From $20,000 to $30,000 takes about 16 months, compared to the 26 months it took to get to $20,000 from $5,000. From $30,000 to $40,000 takes about 14 months. From $40,000 to $50,000, around 12 months. Do you see the compression? Every $10,000 milestone arrives faster than the last. And by the time you're approaching $50,000, your investment returns are contributing nearly as much as you are. Here's a specific comparison that puts the acceleration in perspective. Going from $5,000 to $20,000, you contributed $13,000, and your investments added about $2,000. You did 87% of the work. Going from $20,000 to $50,000, you contributed $15,000, and your investments added roughly $15,000, 50-50. Same person, same contribution rate. But the balance of effort has completely shifted. Your money became your equal partner somewhere around $20,000. And from there, it starts doing more than you. Now, you might be thinking, $500 a month is a lot, and depending on your situation, it might be. But even at $300 a month, you reach $20,000 in about 40 months from a $5,000 start. 3.5 years. And the acceleration after that still applies. It just kicks in on a slightly different timeline. And this is the part most people miss. The person who has $20,000 isn't just $20,000 richer than the person who has $0. They're a completely different financial operator because building $20,000 requires a sustained period of discipline that fundamentally restructures how you think, how you decide, and how you relate to money. Think about what you had to do to get here. You had to maintain consistent savings through months where it felt pointless. You had to resist lifestyle inflation when your income grew. You had to sit through market dips without panicking. You had to say no to purchases that your peers were saying yes to. You had to build systems like automated transfers, investment accounts, so spending awareness, and maintain them for 2+ years. That's not just saving money. That's building a new operating system for your life. And the person running that operating system is capable of things the old version of you wasn't. They can plan in years, not months. They can evaluate trade-offs instead of reacting to emergencies. They can take calculated risks because they understand the math. $20,000 is evidence of the upgrade, not the upgrade itself. The upgrade is you. And here's something interesting about this identity shift. It's visible to you now in a way it wasn't at $10,000. At $10,000, you knew you were doing well, but you still felt like you were trying to be good with money. At $20,000, the trying is over. You just are. You've been doing this long enough, 2 or 3 years of consistent, deliberate financial behavior, that it's not a project anymore, it's a trait. You don't try to save, you save. You don't try to invest, you invest. The verb moved from aspirational to descriptive, and that transition is permanent. People who reach $20,000 through discipline don't revert. The identity is too established. The evidence is too strong. The new operating system isn't a trial version. It's fully installed. You're probably wondering what this acceleration actually looks like in daily life. So let me walk you through some scenarios. Your company announces it's opening a new office in a city you've wanted to live in. The relocation package covers most of it, but there's a $4,000 gap you'd need to cover yourself. At $5,000 saved, that's an impossible ask. It would nearly wipe your cushion. At $20,000, it's a decision you can make kindly, fund without stress, and recoup within a few months of saving. The career move happens. The raise that comes with it, say $10,000 a year, accelerates everything. That $4,000 investment returned $10,000 annually for years. But it was only possible because you had $20,000. A market correction hits and stocks drop 15%. At $5,000 invested, your portfolio drops by $750 and you feel sick. At $20,000, your portfolio drops by $3,000. Now, a bigger number, but your emotional tolerance has been trained by years of watching the market fluctuate. You hold. You might even increase your contributions because you've learned that dips are discounts. 6 months later, the market recovers and you're at $23,000. The person who panicked at $5,000 and sold, they're still trying to figure out when to get back in. A friend approaches you about splitting the cost of a small rental property. The down payment share is $15,000. At $5,000, this conversation doesn't even register as real. At $20,000, it's a serious evaluation. Maybe you do it, maybe you don't. But you're at the table. And being at the table, consistently, is how wealth compounds beyond a single investment account. Your dentist tells you that you need a $3,500 procedure that insurance won't cover. Without savings, this is a credit card crisis at 24% interest. At $20,000, you schedule the procedure, pay from savings, and redirect your next 2 months of investment contributions to rebuild the cushion. No debt, no stress, no interest. The $20,000 didn't pay for the dental work. It prevented the dental work from becoming a financial setback. And the career effects of all this are where the acceleration gets turbocharged. At $20,000, you have roughly 3 to 5 months of living expenses saved. That's meaningful runway. And that runway changes how you interact with every aspect of your professional life. You negotiate salary with the quiet authority of someone who doesn't need the specific offer. You take on stretch projects because the potential upside outweighs the risk. And you're not afraid of failure. You set boundaries because your financial safety doesn't depend on pleasing one particular manager. There's a compound effect here that most people don't recognize. Financial security makes you better at your job. Being better at your job makes you more valuable. Being more valuable increases your income. Increased income accelerates your savings, and faster savings deepen your security. It's a flywheel, and $20,000 is approximately where the flywheel starts spinning fast enough that you can step back and feel the wind. Here's a concrete example. You've been underpaid by about $7,000 compared to market rate. You know it, your manager probably knows it, but you've never brought it up because the conversation felt risky. At $20,000 saved, the risk calculation changes. You have enough runway that even the worst case, an awkward month or two at the same salary, isn't threatening. So you schedule the meeting. You present your research. You ask for $7,000 more. And because you're operating from calm instead of desperation, the conversation goes well. You get $5,000 of the $7,000. Though that extra $5,000 per year, invested over 15 years at 8%, becomes approximately $146,000. A single conversation, enabled by the confidence that $20,000 in savings created, just generated 6 figures of lifetime wealth. Now, I have to warn you about the most common way people stall the acceleration at this exact moment. You hit $20,000. The acceleration is real. You can feel things moving. And paradoxically, that feeling of momentum makes you think, I'm ahead of schedule. I can afford to slow down a little. So you increase your lifestyle by $300 a month. Not a big deal, right? Except $300 a month redirected from investing to spending costs you roughly $18,500 in 5 years, $46,000 in 10 years, and about $147,000 in 20 years. The $300 a month didn't feel like a big decision, but it was a $147,000 decision. And the cruelest part is that it didn't buy you $147,000 worth of life improvement. It bought you slightly nicer lunches and a streaming service you forgot you added. The acceleration at $20,000 is powerful, but it's also fragile. It depends on maintaining the contribution rate that got you here. The moment you reduce contributions, the compounding engine loses fuel and the timeline stretches back out. Protect the pace. Increase it when you can, but never decrease it just because things feel comfortable. Comfort is where acceleration goes to die. Here's a mental model that helps. Think of your investment contributions as the thrust on the airplane. Right now, you've just lifted off. You're climbing, and climbing is when you need the most thrust, not the least. The absolute worst time to reduce engine power is right after takeoff. You reduce power, you lose altitude, and you're back on the runway. The time to ease up on contributions is when you've reached cruising altitude, $100,000, $200,000, when the portfolio is generating enough returns to sustain itself. At $20,000, you're still climbing. Keep the engines at full power. That's not sacrifice. That's recognizing that the most valuable period for compounding is right now, and every dollar you invest during this phase has the most time and the most mathematical advantage it will ever have. So here's what I want to leave you with. The journey from $0 to $20,000 is the hardest stretch in all of wealth building. It's the runway, it's the sand. It's the phase where you do the most work for the least visible return. And I know that from the inside, it feels like it will always feel this way. Like the grind is permanent. Like the numbers will always crawl. But they won't. Because at $20,000, the plane lifts off. The math turns in your favor. Your brain shifts from grinding to accelerating. Your social environment starts reflecting your stability back at you in the form of better opportunities. And every milestone after this one comes faster than the one before. You're not stuck. You're on the runway, and the runway has an end. It ends at $20,000, and after that, you're not running anymore. You're flying. And here's the thing about flying that nobody tells you. Once you're airborne, everything that felt impossible on the ground, the big career moves, the investment opportunities, the financial calm, the confidence, and it all becomes the new normal. The acceleration doesn't feel like acceleration after a while. It just feels like life, a better, faster, more expansive version of life that you built mile by mile on that runway. So keep going. The sand is almost behind you, and what's waiting on the other side is speed you haven't felt yet.